It's been a little while since we took a peek at an Aliengineer game, but this time we're going to take a look at Aliengineer versus Dragan on one of the new maps, specifically Miss Cha's map, the Once Lore. Let's jump in. So as mentioned, we're going to be looking at Aliengineer in the blue trunks versus Dragan in the orange trunks on one of the new maps from the 1.5 update, the Carnival. Now, this is a very interesting map, and as also mentioned a moment ago, this was one of the contest winners. It was Miss Cha's maps. Shout out to Miss Cha. It's really cool to see that the team is integrating some of the community submissions already. There's a lot of things going on this map, so we're going to have to pay especially close attention to this actually rather long game. There's a lot to learn from this. But before we actually get into it, I do have to let you know that I am, of course, part of the content affiliate program for Phobies. That means the Phobies team does give me stuff for producing Phobies content. Got to get that out of the way at the front. So let's actually jump into this game breakdown. So we're getting an interesting opener here because while I've mentioned in the past when we've looked at this map, you can't really take the center here with Snowball because it risks the orange player just offing it. You can safely take these wing positions, these edge positions with the Snowball. And of course we get a follow-up cat in order to try and recap points. Now the response here from Dragan is actually pretty cool. All 6 keys go in and it goes into Hevo. Hevo is relevant because it can cap this point, also can threaten up here depending on what's going on. The positioning is a little weird, but the positioning from this Hevo allows it to cover both this panic point and this panic point, or cap it and come back. There's not a whole lot of places you can go early on. I think it's more intriguing that it was 5-1 instead of, say, 3-3 or 3-2-1 or a variety of other things, specifically Cat and Hevo, so we'll have to see how this plays out. Now, the follow-up from Aliengineer is Jar. This kind of locks down the center point, forces the Cat to here. It's not safe to take this point. This Jar is, we'll see what level it is. It's currently level 13, 299 damage, almost 300. Base, but 654 when it's on the stim, so it's going to light up whatever steps on there. You can't risk it. It's not worth going in. Now, the follow-up here is Gravedigger. It's always interesting and important to keep track of what obstacles get broken. Is there something new that is available to the player breaking it? So we're seeing this breakdown here just below the stim, or excuse me, the vault. I guess it's technically below the stim. I'm not really sure what that one's for yet. We're going to have to see what we can learn, but the Rushmore here makes sense. Breaking this block, as well as having the lob in position to threaten this cat coming in, is definitely valuable. Now, before we move on, this is interesting and somewhat bold by Aliengineer. Yes, you get this 3-2 panic point advantage, but it's obviously going to go the other way very quickly, because the Crushmore will kill the cat comes in, and, you know, you get the idea. The interesting part here is also the follow-up Pterodactyl to supplement. So that means that Aliengineer will immediately be able to kill this cat. There really isn't anything in position by Dragan right now in order to actually threaten any of this. So we're going to get probably your standard trades momentarily, but we'll see how else the players decide to set this up. Now, of course, Aliengineer being one step ahead of me as I was paused, getting that one key staged. This means, of course, that they can immediately retake this point, and although it will be a panic point briefly orange, assuming Dragan goes in, it's not going to be for very long. This is another interesting break. So Dragan is elected to keep the block here. Favors the lobbers, makes sense. But breaks this bottom one. This is another one that I'm not real clear, like this up here. What's the point? Well, we get an Oopsie Baby, which is actually pretty cool. This is a level 13 Oopsie Baby. I imagine at some point this block is going to get broken. That allows a direct line of sight by the 3 Ranger. Does not require the Jar. And all of a sudden you have an Oopsie Baby that's pouring out over 800 damage a hit. Pretty cool. This is yet another map where the subtle power of Crushmore and Gravedigger is on display. Because you're able to make these plays, able to set these things up, even though your opponent, they don't really have much say in the matter. Now the Cowbell comes in, recaps the point to flip it back to our blue player, and then a Tractor. So I recently picked up a Tractor, so got to take some mental notes here. But a Tractor is, as I've said on many occasions before, probably the most powerful phobia in the game. It's up there with Stabby. I would probably say Stabby maybe beats it. I don't know. That's a debate for another day. But Attractor here is an absolute menace. Absolute menace. You can't be in so many positions. These 2 points are locked off. These 2 points are locked off. And then even beyond those, because clearly they end up in the pit, the risk here is that if you ever get a pull, it's just as good as on any other map. You just light them up, especially since there is a stim and this jar can control so much geography. So we get the takedown here onto the cowbell. We'll have to see if Dragan ends up finding a way to dive this Attractor, but right now this looks pretty brutal. Our orange player banks to 11, pops out a 1 key. I'm curious what they're doing. I guess the game plan is to drop 2 medium to large size Phobies out there on the same turn. But right now, the onus is on our orange player in order to make a play. They have to do something to break this game open, because otherwise Aliengineer can just sit back, recap the point. They already had control. They're not under a ton of pressure. They have more keys than our orange player at the moment, so they'll win the key trading war. I mean, assuming equal amounts of 1 keys. Now, we get a Sparky as the follow-up. This is actually reasonable, I think. I'm not a huge fan of Sparky, but this does 950 damage to mechanicals. That's a lot. Unfortunately, or excuse me, 1,054. I don't know why I said 900. 1,054, which is, in fact, enough to take down this Attractor. So that's a one-shot. The Attractor's going to have to dance a little bit, but the problem is, again, where can you put this Sparky so that it can actually connect with it? This is going to be difficult because you need to clear this out. Then you need to find a way to get the Sparky into range. So we do ultimately see the break here. I do appreciate this break. Like I said, it allows this to come through, but this does mean that there's no obstacle here blocking line of sight. Not like it really mattered. The Attractor can get around fairly easily. But as mentioned earlier, I think that our orange player needs to make something happen. They have to do something other than trading 1 keys. The 1 key war is not going to favor them unless they know something we don't, aka they have a ton of 1 keys and for some reason Aliengineer doesn't, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say is unlikely. But as it is, our blue player is just going to keep recapping points and backfilling. Whoop. I mean, there's really nothing left to see on that turn, but I accidentally skipped ahead. Sorry about that, folks. This is one of those unfortunate stalemates that you see sometimes on both new maps, in new scenarios, where the easy answer is to just simply trade 1 keys back and forth. But as I've said on many occasions, in my opinion, if you get into these stalemates, generally it means that one of the players is doing something wrong. Now, on the latter, it's a difficult thing to assign because what if one player outlevels the other player by an enormous amount? There's no reason for the overlevel player to commit in because they have the advantage, and the underlevel player can't advance because they're underleveled. However, we've seen both of these players at the top of the ladder. They're pretty close in stress levels. They both know what they're doing, and I have to imagine that this is not the scenario that either of them want to be in. Aliengineer, as mentioned, can sit on this, but Dragan has to do something else, whether it's swing to one of the sides, it's drop something enormous and shove, find some other way to attack here. I almost would have liked to have seen maybe the Crushmore come up to the north or south and break some of these blocks. Do something, because this trading doesn't look like it's working out. Now, that being said, there are 20 more turns, so we'll have to see how this plays out. Look, they were trading 1 keys for a while. I'm going to cut that stuff out. Pretend I'm playing the Jeopardy music or something. But at what point does one of them decide that, okay, now's the time? Presumably when they're completely out of 1 keys, but they're now below, for example, a Hevo 3.0. They are still in range to say, I mean, I would say Russell, but Boss, something like that could still come out as a big phobie. There's still enough keys. Okay, we're finally seeing the rotation here. The Sparky's in somewhat of a weird spot. Kind of no man's land, but that's as far as it could get. Crushmore rolling on over here. So the cooldown on the Gravedigger still has some time because it just broke these blocks up here. The Crushmore will be ready on the next turn, not this coming turn, but the follow-up turn. Okay, we are finally out of the 1 key trading. We see a Miss Moffat coming down. This is a kind of a big deal. It obviously signals the end of the previous era. And this positioning makes sense because the attractor, even if it moves up, goes 1, 2, 3, it can only hit basically to this arc. Little bit of spacing here. The problem is as soon as Dragan decides to go in, the attractor can make life super difficult, and we see the answer Moffat. Similar to, this may sting a little, similar to Xylo, especially Xylo. There's an enormous advantage to the player who has more pulls, it would seem, on this map. Murder Wing is the final phobie for Dragan. And another pass. See, I don't like this. You gotta make something happen. And this, I think, is not what you wanted to happen. Maybe it is. Just to force Aliengineer to put the pull on cooldown, so now is your chance to, like, invade. But you cannot reach the attractor right now. Not with the Sparky, that is. Which is the whole goal for this Sparky. You just can't reach anything, basically. This Murder Wing is going to die. Not a huge fan of this. Not a huge fan of this. Having the forces split like this is not spectacular, but of course, like I said, we're going to see the death here. You get the 3 Ranger, you have the Gravedigger, even laying down the block here, this all but seals it. Because, of course, Attractor's now going to be off cooldown. The majority of Aliengineer's forces are still here. They're very healthy. By the majority, I mean all of them. I have some comments that we'll get to as we review the game as a whole, but this is, I think there's things to glean from this. Oh, no. It hurts. I mean, there wasn't really much that Dragan could do at this stage, but oof. Oof size large. Oof size large. Electing to go for the spider. I mean, you can snipe the attractor if you really like here. Yep. In fact, despite my miscounting earlier, does take it down in one shot. This feels as though, oh, well, you could almost see Dragan coming back from this spot, but there's really no hope at this stage because you don't have enough phobies to actually deal with the pterodactyl. The Sparky will never connect with anything unless Aliengineer allows it. The Heart, despite being only 1 panic point advantage and trading back and forth, is at 35-25. And we're clearly entering the end state here, as if we weren't before. Final turn, we're going to see a dead Sparky, and that is going to wrap it up for Aliengineer. GG, well played both players. There's, as mentioned, a few different things to discuss for this, so let's switch gears and get into that. So we're zoning in once again. We're just going to let the game play in the background as I give some thoughts on this. I think the openers from both players are pretty interesting. I don't really have a problem with this snowball option. I don't have a problem necessarily with Hevo. I think ultimately this came down to some weird things. Namely, I guess weird isn't the best way to describe it, but it's really the passiveness of both players. And as mentioned, it's very easy to fall into this trap. I actually do it a lot, where if you're unclear on exactly what the path is forward, maybe this is one of Dragan's first games on this map. I'm sure it's one of the first games. Maybe it's literally the first game. You're not sure exactly what angle to attack from, how to attack from it. But the biggest things on this map are pulls and, of course, flyers in order to help assist with fighting said pulls. Now, you could argue boops, but the problem is it's very difficult to get the appropriate surface area. Think about if you were to try and come through this channel here and boop. What are you going to do, push them backwards? It's unlikely you boop them into a pit. Now, I do appreciate, as mentioned earlier, the Gravedigger and Crushmore. I think there's a lot of value there, potentially. I think that the responses from Dragan from the perspective of the Phobies themselves, as well as the overall strategy of playing it so passively, ultimately led to their destruction. Things such as Oopsie Baby didn't matter. It didn't seem like it actually did anything. Additionally, just to beat the dead horse a little bit further, if you're not going to dive the attractor, you gotta find another way around. Like, you gotta do something else. I don't think that there's any way to actually beat an attractor in this passive game. Now, if you were at an advantage, you somehow controlled the majority of the panic points, you were way up in life, hard health that is, maybe. But I think ultimately a more aggressive stance needed to be put forth by Dragan, either with more flyers, getting ready to shove and accepting losses, that sort of thing. There were a couple windows where Aliengineer might have not been able to pop out as much of a response as they maybe needed to, but I think the appropriate way to respond to this, or at least I'm thinking, and again, I could be wrong, is to swing around either the north or down in the south. I don't see any way that you can run through the middle and get after that attractor unless you immediately commit to a ton of flyers. And the only way for that to happen is basically not to pop out the Phobies that you had. So I think there were a number of factors here, but let me know what you think. How do you think Dragan could have taken this game? Have you been in this scenario, and how did you get out of it? Or does this look like that's exactly how you win on the once lore? Of course, you can always come by the live stream. Link for that is in the description, as alongside the link from the Random Slots Discord, where people are talking Phobies and other games all the time. But that's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and Black Lives Matter.